Good morning and welcome back to another video. I think we are live, loud and clear. Do let us know in the chat if you can hear us, if you can see us. It's been a minute. This wonderful gentleman alongside me, Mr. Ahsan Naeem, the head honcho, the director of football over at 9320. Already a question, Ahsan, what trainers are you rocking this summer, my slime? So from Josh in the chat there.
Really? Hang on. I'll show it right
now. This is what we're here for. The crap check.
I got them out last night.
Look at them, man. There we go, Josh. Is that? There we go. That's if you want to waste on a nutshell, there you go. How are you, my friend? Anyway, you good?
Yeah, I am. I'm enjoying the off season. I'm enjoying the Euros. Yeah. It was a pretty intense season for City. The one just gone.
Yeah.
And I think I was really invested in the idea of City winning that fourth title in a row. So yeah. I think I felt it in a way that even, I guess, that sort of before the first Champions League win, there's that sort of anxiety of we've got to do this thing. And for me, the winning the fourth title on the bounce, because nobody's ever done it before, felt as important as winning that first Champions League. So it was quite a tense run-in, but
you could sense it, couldn't you? You could sense the feeling in the mood of people that they were really everyone wanted it, and I feel like more than probably most hunts, I felt it personally. Like, I don't know, it felt tiring, didn't it? It felt quite exhausting. You could see it in the faces of the players.
Definitely, and I think also, I think we have become accustomed to all the noise around City outside of football. And I think that's really tiring when that gets layered on top of what you've got a title running, and there's always that sort of November, December where everybody's like, City aren't going to win the league here. Or, oh, look, City have got weaknesses. Oh, Arsenal are going to win it. Oh, Liverpool are favourites. And we kind of go from that to March, April. Suddenly it's like, oh, the league's not very competitive. City are turning it into a farmers league. Do you know what I mean? It's just like the kind of, the narratives are really exhausting sometimes. So I was really happy when the season ended.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago for me already. That the season feels like, I mean, that's the way football is these days. It doesn't wait around for anyone, but it feels, like a long time ago. I mean, like football never stops, and there's been so much news. And of course, as soon as we won the league, there's always this news about City suing the Premier League and all this kind of stuff. And it also sort of leads into a little bit what we'll talk about today. Now, we were chatting before we went live. You were talking about how, Sam was talking about, Sam Lee of, many podcasts in Athletic and so on, was talking about how the reason City have been quiet in the transfer market so far is sort of around PSR issues. But then Stefan sort of countered that on Twitter. Stefan Bolton, if you don't know who he is, he's the guy who's always on TalkSport. Stefan, we both know him very well. He's a top bloke. But he's the man behind all the numbers, basically. He understands it all. And he was saying that's not true. There's a lot of headroom. I'm usually take people on their word, if that makes sense. I usually tend to believe people are well informed. And I don't think people are just randomly throwing things out for the sake of it. But what's your take on that sort of contrasting information? Where do you feel that sits?
I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. So it's not, City don't have an issue with the profit and sustainability rules, right? And they don't have that issue because if you look at how they've bought and sold over the last 2 or 3 years, it's a rolling 3-year thing, right? So if you look at if you look at the way that City have bought and sold in the last 3 years, they've got loads of PSR headroom, and it's mainly because the academy churns out players that they can flip. And so if you sell £50 million worth of academy players, that actually gives you probably like 200 million quid in terms of PSR headroom.
When you're winning, what City you're winning as well with the money coming in, it's
they're in a strong. So from a PSR point of view, they're probably in a strong position. I think, and this is just me a little bit guessing and reading between the lines, I think they've probably got a little bit of an issue with the wage bill. And what I mean by that is they've got a high wage bill. Now, I think that if you couple the high wage bill with the fact that they bought some duds in the last few years, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's put us in a position that we've not often been in, where there's some fat around the squad that was quite expensive. Yeah?
Careful what you say about that. Not naming any names in particular.
Yeah, I didn't mean that literally, or excuse the pun, whichever way you want to take that. But like basically, so for example, like Calvin Phillips was out on loan, Cancelo was out on loan. They're players who are coming back to City this summer.
It's not very City, is it, to have that deadwood? And it's usually, if we do, it's like sort of smaller players, but these are actual big names, big name players who are on a minimum 150, 200k a week, and that's a lot of money, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then when you roll in the fact that, well, Núñez and Kovacic came in last summer, and neither really feels like a hit.
Permanent, I would say. Permanent is the word I'd look there. Like,
I think I'm being harsh with Kovacic insofar as I think with him it's just an age thing. Like, I think
you're right. I think you're right. The reason I chose permanent is because he's obviously not the solution. He's a nice little stopgap, but he doesn't feel to me like when you sign, I don't know, you sign Rodri, you're like, well, he's obviously going to be midfielder if it goes well for 7 years. You don't feel that with Kovacic, and I'm a Kovacic fan. I like him a lot, but I agree. It doesn't feel to me like he's a stopgap, and it's really obvious.
And so you have him and Núñez in the squad already, and then you've got the lads that are out on loan that are coming back as well. I think City will be really minded this summer to. So you start with last season. You go, okay, so last season you've won the league with, what was it, 91 points or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You've been knocked out of the Champions League on penalties to the team that went and won it. And you lost the FA Cup final in the final. So you got to the final of the FA Cup final. And you did all that with no De Bruyne for most of the season, no Grealish for most of the season, and no Stones for most of the season. So your starting point is, well, if we can get those three lads fit and firing, then the squad will be stronger than it was last season. Then after that, I think they'll be minded to kind of wait and see what happens with offers for players, because I think that like, for example, they didn't expect the Saudi offer for Riyadh last summer.
Yeah,
I think that they probably had an idea that they were going to sell Laporte, but they'd already kind of lined Gvardiol up, and they tried really hard to keep Gundo, but it didn't work. So I think this summer they'll be minded to go, you know what, we're going to wait and see if somebody offers for players. Like, one, can we get rid of Cancelo and Phillips on permanent deals? How does that make the wage bill look?
That's 400k a week then, isn't it? Extra,
more or less. I think loads of people are asking about the Bruno Guimareas Newcastle thing, right? And why we didn't do that. And look, I think on paper we all agree that he would be like the perfect. So it would almost, it'd be borderline like luxury. It'd be like borderline taking the piss to go and sign him because he's that good, and he would add that much, because he can do both play alongside Rodri and sort of deputize for him as well. But at the same time, I've been thinking about this recently, right? Because I was trying to figure out like what will be going through their heads. Well, so look, if Newcastle are going, well, it's release clause or bust. If City hand Newcastle £100 million in one go, do you see how much power that gives Newcastle in the transfer window, in the transfer market? Because you single-handedly solve all of their PSR issues, and suddenly maybe they can go and drop £200 million on players. And I think that we sometimes forget that, like, there's a lot of politics at play in the Premier League, and there will be a feeling of, like, I'm sure that conversations that are had between Khaldoon and Soriano when they go and buy from within the Premier League about, all right, but who are we giving the money to, and what are we going to create a bigger problem for ourselves by going and giving a shitload of money to Newcastle?
Do you think they're scared of Newcastle that way? Because Newcastle, with all due respect, they're not there yet. I mean, it could be, but they're not there yet. And Bruno is, in my opinion, alongside that, and Gordon, probably their best player, So
no, but so look at it another way, right? So let's say we give them 100 and they go and buy 3 players, and one of them for them within 6 months is like, all right, we've replaced Bruno in a really strong fashion. Yeah. I think that City. So I said something on a podcast recently. There's loads of stuff around this, right? But I said something on a podcast recently, which is that actually I feel as though City have been. If you go back to when Pep first came in, there was much more of a drive to go and sign younger players from Europe that were kind of, the fees were a little bit lower. And there was this sense of like City are taking a punt here. So everybody from Bernardo to KDB to like, just there was a succession of signings, even Rodri, Laporte. There was I think it did well. There's been a succession of signings that felt like people were almost going, oh, well, he's not that good, or he's not worth that. Why have they done that? And I think that we've had more success with that than we've had with what people would consider to be proven Premier League players. And I just wonder whether, like, I'm curious as to what their strategy will be moving forward, because I think they've signed too many duds. Simple, yeah.
I agree.
And I think that some of them have been expensive. And people won't like me saying this, but they know me well enough, people who listen, to know that they know what people know what I think about Grealish. So for me, Grealish, Nunez, Kovacic, and Phillips, if you add up the fees of those four players, that's a ridiculous amount of money. That is really a ridiculous amount of money for nowhere near what I would consider to be efficient top club recruitment. So they've got to be mindful of what they do next.
I on the Grealish thing, I don't think it's even down to debating. To me, it's not about how good a player can be. It's more about the collection of work, if that makes sense to me. So I actually think you're right to be sort of down on Grealish overall. I understand why people defend him and to bring what he brings to the team, because I get that. I see that too. But at the same time, I saw Stefan actually want to tweet about this, and he was sort of implying, and I've come around to this view as well, that look, for what he's paid, you would think anyone on 300k a week is sort of given to be. You shouldn't have to find new motivations, if that makes sense. That's an elite wage, and like you'd expect. I'm not trying to dig him out because I understand he's got his own personal demons off the pitch, but allegedly and so on. But I don't know the full details of that. But you'd expect that just sort of wouldn't happen for a player of that fee, and that essentially you feel like you're getting the cream of the crop there. And the cream of the crop in football terms are brilliant footballers, but they're also ridiculously dedicated professionals who have got their shit in line. And like you feel sometimes like. That's not what Grealish has been good. For 100 million, there should be no debate around Grealish at all. That's a fact. I agree with that. I agree that there should be no debate. When you pay that much money, it should be a surefire hit, basically, shouldn't it? Yeah, and I think there is the fact that there's so much debate around him in general proves that it's not been a surefire hit. It hasn't been, and I mean that's fair. And I understand why some people would be like, well. If that transfer had cost 60 million and he was on 200k a week, I think we'd all be pretty fine with it as a squad player. But yeah, he's all right. But I think for our record signing, I understand. I would want to see the promise that you got with Vardiel. When everyone can look at this guy and go, fuck me, that's a special footballer in the making there. And you feel that way about him. And this money spent, and you go, that's what it looks like. The package around Haaland, that's what it looks like. The money. I understand why people would say, we've not seen that from Grealish. He's had brilliant spells. I'd argue he's had a great spell towards the end of the treble season. But last season, he's just not good enough. You shouldn't have to have motivations used when you're that established and that big. And I understand he came to this level late. But I would say that's City's failing for the outlay to not see the potential. But either way, he's there. But I agree that it probably, in hindsight, feels overpriced. And we talk about wages. It feels an awful lot of money. He's one of the most expensive players. Was the most well-paid players at the club. He's up there at the very top level. And then when you add Nunez, you add Calvin Phillips, you add the fact that we can't shift Cancelo because that got so toxic. And then you add, people like Kovacic. He probably won't be here in 2 years. And I've got nothing against him. But then you think,
what I mean. Like,
yeah, I think it's not smart. It doesn't seem smart, does it?
No, for a club that's lauded for its recruitment, and for a club that prides itself on efficient recruitment,
off the ball.
They've been a bit too. I don't know what the strategy overall has been. Like, I think that last summer is a great example of. I almost feel like old City never sign Nunez. That what happens is they go after, like, for example, they went after Harry Kane.
Sign anyone, do you? If they don't get anyone, that's what they used to do. Aguero, company replacements. We know what it's like. You just go, fuck it, we'll use academy lad or whatever.
Exactly. We'll wait a year, and I feel as though the Kovacic Nunez thing just felt a little bit too much like, we'll get a plaster, yeah, or we'll take a punt.
It's a pricey plaster, isn't it?
It is because it's not one signing alone. It's like it becomes suddenly there's a body of work there that doesn't look too good, and so I'm actually not hugely surprised that they have decided to keep their powder dry this summer.
Do you think that's going to happen? By the way, do you think it's going to be a quiet summer?
Yeah, I think they'll do Savio. I think that'll happen for sure. And I think that'll be it. And I think what'll happen next is if somebody comes and offers, like I've heard some links of Nunes to Saudi look great. If some Saudi club comes in and goes, we'll give you what you paid for him, and he goes, I want to go, because they're like, we're not sure you're going to play that much. Well, all right, cool, flip him. And then they'll try and do some business. But I think the other thing is and this is part of why I feel bad criticizing the recruitment, is because it's really hard to improve on what we have. The reality is Rodri's the best, almost arguably the best midfielder in the world. And if he's not the best midfielder in the world, Kevin De Bruyne's the best midfielder in the world. And if he's not the best midfielder in the world, Phil Foden's the best midfielder in the world. So you see what I mean? Like the levels are so high that it's tricky to not feel like whatever you're doing is somehow not improving on what you have already. So they're in a tricky spot. And then if you factor in on top, maybe Pep goes next summer. So a new guy will come in and he will definitely want more players. Yeah. And then you look at the age of Kev, Walker, a couple of the others in the squad, Bernie, where you're a little bit beginning to think about succession planning. I wonder whether they go, and I'm speculating again, but if Pep has gone, nah, you know what? I think it's 90% likely that I'm going to go next summer.
Do you think he's told them, by the way, now what he's going to do? That is a hard question to answer, mate. It really is. But I'd be very surprised if he meets a man as powerful as the Sheikh and just gives him a waffle. I'd be surprised. I feel like he owes them.
I think I look at it the other way around. I think they all respect what Guardiola has done for the club so much
that they've never,
like they're never going to say to him, "We want an answer right now." I think what they'll say is, "You take your time, but you know that we want you, that we'll back you with X, Y, and Z." I'm pretty sure that he already knows if he stays, he's going to get another massive pay rise.
Yeah, huge.
I think that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I would never be so arrogant as to try and predict what Pep Guardiola will do. I hope he stays, but I'm just saying that from a strategy point of view, if they feel he's going to leave next summer, maybe they feel, actually, Pep's going, I'm going next summer. I love these lads. They're my guys. We just won the league. I'll have Kev back fit next season. I'll get Jack back. I'll get his head right, get him back. I'll get Stones back. The squad will be stronger for that. The younger players will be a year older. Phil Foden is improving year on year. Do you know what I mean? Like, he might just look at it like that and go, I'll go another year with these are my guys, and I'll go another year with them. And then I can see a world in which Begarestain and Soriano and Khaldoon go, well, that means that when the next guy comes in next summer, we can do what we did with Pep.
Yeah,
give him 250, 300 million and go, off you go, build a squad in your vision, in the same way that that Pep got to build a squad in his
17-18 season, when he did that big summer after sort of seeing how the squad went. No, I think there's something in that. Ultimately, my personal opinion is that I think they've been spooked by the Saudi money a little bit, and how last season a club as powerful as Man City lost Mahrez, lost Gundogan when they didn't want to lose either. I think that stung them, to be honest. And then they had the whole kerfuffle around Kyle Walker again, which to me, looking back in hindsight, felt very panicky. The fact that Pep on the summer holidays had to sort of go for dinner with Kyle Walker to convince him to stay, and then obviously end up captain. Looking back, it was just a clusterfuck. That summer was a bit of a. I think City was spooked. I really think they are, and I think they're suffering a little bit from it. And I do think that the looming presence of the Saudi money hanging over, and you've got KDB making those quotes. I don't think he's going to go, but he's made those quotes, where you consider it. And then you see Edison, still a little bit is up in the air, arguably. You don't know who could leave. And the fact that it could happen quite late in the window, I think City are like, they're sitting back and watching, and they're getting the mood because they don't know what it's going to be. And maybe because of last summer when it was a little bit hectic, and because we talk about City of the previous years where they held the cool a little bit and they waited for the right player to come in. And as much as we all waffled on podcasts and videos and said what are they doing, and they were proven right, maybe they're trying to look back and go, maybe we need to be calmer again. Maybe we need to not make the panic signing. Maybe we need to sign the player that we actually want. We will wait a year or so, and we will trust these young lads. Rico Lewis is a year older. He arguably deserves much more game time than he got last season. Oscar Bobby's on the cusp of potentially becoming a very special footballer. And as much as we know a young player as they are now, but we only have to look at the transformation from Phil Foden to phenomenal player to genius last season, to know how much a player can improve in a year, in the summer, because someone always steps up. I'm always a firm believer in that. You put brilliant players and someone steps up. So I think City will be probably saying that, you know what, we're not going to panic. It doesn't make it good for us as fans. We want to see change. We want to see evolution. But I think we probably have to be aware of the nature of spending hundreds of millions of pounds. It's not something that City have done easily and often because it's hard to do to get right. And I think we're aware of that. So what are you going to say?
Yeah, it comes back to what's your starting point. And if your starting point is we just won the league, and we won the league without Kevin De Bruyne for 5-6 months of it. We won it without Jack. We won it without John Stones, 3 players who were the cornerstone of a treble.
Even Erling on an off season by his standards.
Yeah, exactly. Haaland was out for 2 months almost, I think. So I think you almost go, there's no need to panic buy. And actually, we should be doing the opposite of panic buying. We should be going, you know what? The squad's strong enough. I think the one, and I understand this and I agree with it, the one fear or issue that we have is obviously if something happens to Rodri, that's an issue. Now, look, the problem is, how do you replace a guy like Rodri? It's not as simple as we'll go and buy a backup, because we tried that with Phillips, didn't work. I think that there's very few players that you can look at and go, all right, they'll come in and we know that that's a bet. It's not a bet, sorry. We know that's a surefire thing. I think most things are a bet, and they've just taken too many bets on that haven't worked. And so they're not in a position to bet. And they're also not in a position. I don't think that obviously they feel that they're not in a position where they want to drop 100 million on effectively a Rodri backup.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You're absolutely right. And the more you sort of, like, to me, what we need, but it creates further problems. But what we need is you can't get someone better than Rodri. You can't. And I don't think you're ever going to, to me, the solution, if it's even possible, is to find someone, and it's a backup, I admit, but find someone who can play the home game against Bournemouth, someone who can play the home game against the promoted Ipswich. And that game comes around every 3 or 4 weeks, though, that level of game, which means Rodri plays 20% less games if possible. We tried that, haven't we, Calvin Phillips? We tried that, and that didn't work. And I do wonder if, because it failed, we're going to presume that you can't do it. I think maybe we just signed the wrong guy. If we could sign someone who could do a good 7 out of 10 while De Bruyne and everyone else, while we're at home, we've got all the ball, like in the way that if John Stones was suddenly playing in midfield, we said, you're playing DM today, and we're at home to newly promoted Ipswich, you'd feel pretty confident that we'd still keep the ball and be fine. I feel like we need, I know it's easier said than done, but I accept that we can't replace, we can't replace Rodri. We can't have anyone as good as him. So you don't look for someone who can be as good in the big games. You look for someone who can make sure that he's available and fit for the big games. I wonder if they think about that. And I wonder if that's why you see links to a Kimmich or someone like that. Someone who you think if he was alongside Kovacic and we were playing at home, would we be okay? Probably, well,
again with Kimmich, bro, it's like he's on 320 grand a week at Bayern Munich, and he's got a year left on his deal, and he's going to want that money. There's not a world in which
give you a status.
There's not a world in which he's giving that up. And then you look at his age, and you go, hang on, we need to future proof and not. Like, for me, the solution is not a short-term solution anymore. I think the solution is to sit on your hands. You tried to get Bellingham. You probably end up dodging a bullet. You tried to get Rice. You didn't get him. Paquetá, the betting charges happened. They were all the right side of 25. They were all the right age, the right profile.
Is fine, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. So if you're not, if that guy isn't there this summer, It's all right to wait. A year's a long time in football. A year from now, who knows who the player is that everybody's going, oh my God, we need to sign him because actually he's amazing.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's hard, isn't it? Go on.
I've got a question for you. Do you know a lot about Jacob Wright?
I'm not, to be honest, my academy knowledge has sort of dropped off the last year or two. I know of him and I know people talk about him a lot, but it's not like I've watched him a lot because since I've had Ruben, like Saturday mornings, going to games, this is a no-go. I'm with the family, so I don't watch the academy as much as I used to, but I've not felt the, what's it called? My sort of connections with the academy. I used to know Joe Shields really well. Joe Shields, who went to Chelsea, Southampton. I used to chat to him academy games, and he'd tell me he'd people don't realize, but he'd sit there with pen and paper and go, Steve, and he'd write an age group, write all these players, like, watch all these names, and he'd say these will be the ones that will come through. That you got to pay attention to 3 or 4 years. And we'd sit there at games just having a chat about football and life and whatever. And he was pretty much always right, but I've not had that chat for 2-3 years since he's left or whatever. So I don't know who the ones are seen or how highly they're seen, and I've not watched him with my own eyes. I know Jacob Wright is really liked. But I can't. I don't know if he's.
You know what I found?
But I know the Jorginho comparisons are a legit thing around the academy. People compare him to him, and I tell you, people can look. It's funny because until a year ago, people would go, Jorginho. But I think we've seen it at Arsenal. He's a very useful player. He's a very smart footballer. Definitely. And if you had a young Jorginho coming through, you'd fucking take that in a heartbeat. And I would, because smart footballer who can, England would be crying out for someone like that now. Maybe they've got that with Wharton coming through. But I'm curious to see, and it's because we're approaching one of my favorite times of the season, preseason. I really like preseason. I just do. I'm unashamedly a fanboy of low stakes football. I like it. I like it when footballers just play like footballers without the pressure on them, and you see them enjoying themselves. And I can't wait to see what the academy lads do, because I think there's going to be quite a few of them there, and we'll see what Jacob Wright has to offer. He's going to start a game probably. Go on.
What I found curious was that Jacob Wright has signed with Rock Nation, right? And if you don't know who Rock Nation are, that's Jay-Z's agency, right? And I don't know how many young footballers at that level they've signed up in the Prem, but I don't remember. I follow them on Twitter and Instagram, and I don't remember seeing them make noise about an academy player that they've signed. And I saw them make noise about Jacob Wright, and it sort of it almost made me take a step back. So I was like, okay, that means one or two things: either he's moving because he's that good and he needs a top agent to go and get a move to a big club, or he's that good that he signed with that agency and City are like, do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those. So I think I read somewhere that he's definitely going on the preseason tour, and they have got high hopes for him. So
he's 18 now, turns 19 in September, so he's the right age to be around, the squad. Once again, it's so tough, isn't it? Because someone mentioned Lavia in the chat, and he's a great example of someone who fucks up there. Though he's had nothing here, he's disappeared as well from football entirely. But this is the age now. But the problem always is the bloat, as you talk about. Guardiola is never going to play Jacob Wright, even if he's good enough, but he's not going to, because I've seen the seniority and rankings and hierarchy ahead of Nunes, ahead of Kovacic, and ahead of...
You know what? Hang on. He played Rico Lewis ahead of a lot of players. Yeah,
true.
I know that we always feel that Pep...
Was that not frustration though with Cancelo and Walker at the time? We've seen the footage. He was frustrated with his players, wasn't he? And maybe that comes around again, but I felt like I don't know if that would be the same with Kovacic, Nunes, and Rodri, because as much as they don't seem like the kind of players that Pep would get frustrated with. But maybe I'm wrong there.
I see what you're saying, but I almost feel as though I think what Rico proved is that you can go on a preseason tour and
impress,
and impress. And if Guardiola kind of falls in love with certain aspects of your game, he's like, right, you come with me. You're somebody who I like and I believe in. And I don't know with Jacob Wright. I've got no idea, but I'm just curious. The Rock Nation thing definitely made me go, all right, he's probably got something about him that he's not just another run-of-the-mill academy player, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think, I think the Rock Nation thing is something to pay attention to. They're not the nobody agents, are they? They're a big deal. They're big time, and I think we'll see how that unfolds. We'll know during preseason, and I just sort of like it when he takes only a few academy players, because they're the ones that I've always noticed the trend. You can look at the academy players that he plays in preseason. They are the ones that are going to stay with the first team squad. He does not go past that pool of players. He rarely does. They're the ones that then get the Carabao Cup games and whatever on the bench because they're the ones that he's seen up close and trained with 3 or 4 weeks in preseason, and he trusts them. So I'm going to be curious to see what happens because there is going to be a chance in preseason for these players. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, that solution. I'd be very surprised if City, because everything we just talked about is we want City to wait, to get the right transfer. But Rodri, we can't fuck him because he's knackered. So we have. I said the other day in a video, I don't care what the solution is with Rodri, but there has to be one. I don't mind if they decide they're going to just play Kovacic as a 6 and go for it. I don't think that's ideal, but they have to stick to a solution. They cannot just go, well, it's Rodri and bust. I'm sorry, it can't be that. If we decide not to sign someone, they have to make a concerted effort to find a solution in that position. Not go, well, we tried Nunes there, we weren't sure about it. So, no, you made a rod for your own back there. If you're not going to sign a player, use the squad, but you have to.
Well, look, if Nunes stays, they have to use him. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that I actually think, and it does frustrate me. It frustrated me a little bit last season. I think the solution, the thing that sort of bothers me is that bottom half of the Premier League at home, I'm talking all of them, the bottom half of the Premier League at home, you don't need to play Rodri in every single one of those games. There's at least 5 games, 5 home games. Minimum, there's 5 home games.
I agree.
That Rodri can be sat down in. And the same goes for the Champions League. There's a minimum of 3 or 4 Champions League group games. We obviously, with the Swiss system that's coming in, we'll have to see how that pans out. But there are moments where you can sit Rodri down.
And you get half time as well. If it's terrible at half time, then bring him on. But you'll know, you can feel, the thing about Manchester City is you can feel the Manchester City game after 10 minutes. You always can. You can see what mood they're in, if it's working or not. Obviously, football's crazy, but yeah. Go on.
Do you think that because Guardiola was a 6, right, and he believes that 6 is almost like the heartbeat of the team, that he almost places a larger importance on that presence? Do you know what I mean?
1 billion percent. Absolutely. We all know what he feels about midfielders, and we all know what he feels about positional, positional play and a sense of players around him. And he naturally, as well, if you're Riga, if you were a captain and you were a 6 and you're a great footballer, you're going to pay more attention to your own position. Of course you are. But he's right. I mean, he would have learned this. It's part of his football education that it all stems from the centre, and you want a genius there. And you can only look at Manchester City's success. And Manchester City's success, as much as you talk about great defenders and great strikers, I maintain the last decade has been about our midfield. It just has.
Oh, of course.
Like De Bruyne, David Silva, Yaya Toure, Fernandinho, Rodri, Gundogan. It's been around geniuses in midfield that United and Liverpool and Chelsea and Arsenal couldn't get close because they couldn't get the ball up us.
That's why signing so many fucking duds is annoying, man. It's like, come on, you've built a club, a reputation around the idea that we've just got the best midfielders in the world. And I'd throw Bernardo Silva in there as well.
I forgot Bernardo. Right? I did another one, yeah.
So many players that just play at such a high level that it's really difficult for opposition teams to the Premier League. They couldn't handle it. They've not been able to handle it. So to have miss after miss is disappointing. To have all the scouts in the world, and not be able to identify, like I'm going to say something, and it's just my opinion. Alexis McAllister would have improved our midfield like tenfold, like almost like the ready-made Gundo replacement. And he had a release clause that was cheap as chips, and we love release clauses. How have you missed that? How have you missed it? It don't make any sense to me.
They're waiting for Gundogan's future regarding Maddison and McAllister, and it's been a bit of a clusterfuck. Even though we're still in a good position, we won the league. I think there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that things have been great, but occasionally we get away with it a little bit, and down to the genius of Pep, and that's Pep for you. Ahsan, I know we've both got a limited time, so we've got to start wrapping it up. I want to quickly go to the super chat from Masumi. Said, if it wasn't for Pep and City winning loads, City fans would be going for the players Ahsan mentioned, plus the board. They've got to be smart this year. I feel like he's referring to the earlier conversation there where we talked about, I feel I've confused a little bit there. Maybe the ones that we... Yeah, anyway, I can't break that down. I can't quite understand it. But I agree that they've got to be smart. Was it for Pep and City winning loads? City fans would be going for the players Ahsan mentioned, plus the board. Do you mean like the ones we talked about earlier, be throwing the money?
Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying now.
And you're right, mate. You're absolutely right. And they have to be smart. And I think that's what I want to see. I want to see City be smart this summer more than anything. And that might frustrate us as fans, but it's essential. Ahsan, you're a legend, mate. Thank you so much as always. Guys, please do go and check out the 9320 podcast. Wonderful stuff over there. Erudite, passionate, informative. Go and check it out. Top blokes, top birds, big blues. Link in the description below. It's a cup of coffee for the month, basically. But then when you got your cup of coffee, you can listen to a brilliant podcast. Go and check it out. Thank you so much, Ahsan. In a bit.
Cheers.
Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, guys.